welcome back to another episode of the Unbreakable podcast on the Unbreakable Podcast Network. Today, I am absolutely delighted to have Amanda Graham, who is a comedy screenwriter who has worked for BBC and Apple, currently working on a couple other projects, but she's the author of a book called Good Stuff to Read When You're About to Lose Your Shit. And not only that, but she's also a public speaker. So this is exciting. Amanda, thanks so much for joining me today.
Are you kidding? I'm so excited to be on the Unbreakable thing. I'm just excited. Thank you for inviting me. It's very cool.
Yeah, this is awesome. This is awesome. So tell us a little bit, give us a little bit of background about who Amanda is and talk to us a little bit about this amazing career that you've had. And then we can maybe jump into your book.
Okay. Well, I am definitely on paper not the kind of person who has had the life that I've had at all. I was born into both sides of the family are working class. I lived all over the world. It was kind of a wild place, and I was in a cult when I was young, and I survived that as well. So that kind of steered me when in my young, kind of adulthood. And then I moved back to the UK, and I went and did graduate work and then went into TV because I loved TV and I was obsessed with it. And so I wanted to go into comedy immediately. And they were like, no, you're a medievalist. You're going to go into religion and ethics. So I did that.
Oh.
But then the whole time I was fighting to get into comedy. BBC Comedy was like a very big deal. And I got in eventually. And yeah, it's been a crazy journey of real highs and a lot of failures, and then a lot of pivoting and learning and building on those failures. So it's been wild.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And so what was the span of your screenwriting career? Like how many years did you write that and do that kind of work?
So I'm still doing that. Like I started very late. I started at 41. I had to do stand-up first before I could get a break in screenwriting. So I did stand-up first and then got my break through that. And I started in children's, and then I moved up to adult comedy, and that's been really fun. I've done loads of TV, and now I also write in a development capacity. So what I mean is, when people are developing their scripts and getting them ready to be made, they send them to me and I make them funnier. It's called punching them up. So that's one of the things I do. And yeah, and so you learn to do different things. I've written for comedians who've had specials, all kinds of stuff. So and I've been doing it now for 11 years.
Wow. So you dropped a little bomb there. You're like, so I'm in comedy. I wrote with BBC. I survived a cult, and I wrote a book. So that great introduction there. So tell me a little bit about that period of your life and how it kind of influences how you see the world. Because most people who go through those types of experiences don't choose laughter.
Yeah. It's weird because ever since I was very little, we grew up in a family with Monty Python records and Jonathan Winters records and Your Show of Shows. I've been loved comedy forever, and my brain has always thought that way. And I used to do little sketches when I was a kid. We used to perform them. We used to give the kids freezy pops. The long ones in the wrappers. If they would come and watch us do skits. And so we'd have a sliding glass door, like in the 70s in a basement, you would have a sliding glass door. It's very common. And we would set seats out. So I had been doing sketches. And, but then when we were in the cults, there was no joy. We weren't allowed to watch TV or read certain newspapers. Like the girls always had to wear dresses, even if we were like skiing or sledding and it was 40 below in upstate New York, we wouldn't be allowed to wear pants. It went absolutely crazy. So that blew up, and there's some details I can't talk about because it's somebody else's story, but essentially we ended up having to go into hiding for a couple of days because the pastor tried to kill. It was just a whole thing. And what's weird is basically when you're in a super fundamentalist kind of environment. All of the teenagers get together and they share each other's contraband, like hidden tapes and like, so we used to have things in hiding places and hide like, and we used to tape over Christian tapes with like 80s pop hits and, you know, all that kind of stuff. And so, and one of the things that we used to have to do as contraband was comedy. And so I would have these tapes and I would tape over like hymn tapes with somebody's stand up or whatever else. And so, and that was a way of like continuing to go, what was weird was I was obsessed with comedy, but I didn't think that comedy writing was something I could do.
Mm,
I lived in the middle of nowhere in Maryland. Both of my sides of the family were all working class. Like nobody was a creative. No, like it just never seemed that was like something for Sid Caesar to do, not me.
mm-hmm.
And so when I was going through I was dropping out of my PhD. It's a whole nother thing, and I didn't know what to do. And then my brain went, work in TV. This is it. It's time. Work in
Wow.
TV. You're obsessed with TV. And I got in there, and it took years before anyone took me seriously in terms of the comedy. And I was advised to be a stand-up. So I did that for a year and a half, 2 years, and I got discovered that way. And somebody saw my set, and they told their executive producer. So then the executive producer sent me an email going, send me your 5 best jokes. So that's what I did.
Wow.
And then that's how I got my break. The next thing I knew, I was in a writer's room, and it just started from there.
Wow. Wow. What's
But
your
it's
what's your
like
favorite
I
memory
tell
of
people
your break-in?
the early break-in or just any point of break-in.
Any point to break-in, what's your favorite memory of break-in when you
Um,
made it and you just something big and
okay.
profound happened for you?
Okay. And this is a perfect example of how not to do what everybody else does, right? To not do what everybody else does. And that is, I had written about a comedy about my time in the cult, but like a kind of
Mm,
sci-fi type of version of it, not exactly like that. And I knew it was weird. And during the lockdown, because our industry just collapsed, everybody was reading everybody's scripts. So I was like, and
mm,
so we were all exchanging scripts, LA, London, New York, everybody. And I was sending it to people, and people were either going, this is brilliant, or going, what the hell is what is this? I don't know what this is. And so I didn't know what to do with it. Anyways, during the lifting of one of the lockdowns where people could work in TV, but they still had to have the masks and everything. It was still very strict. And that sketch show I wrote on, they were having their second season, and I didn't get the job. And I was a
mm,
bit gutted by that, but I figured, no, actually, I was quite gutted by that. And then the lockdown happened again. And I was like, what am I going to do? And I said, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to get this script to someone I know is going to appreciate this. So I thought, I'm not going to do it like everyone else. I'm not going to try and get the attention of a channel or a production company that will take it to the channel. I was like, I'm going to find my director. That's what I'm going to do. So I made a short list of 5 directors, and then I did deep research into all of them. And one of them had directed every show I've loved from the beginning. He did all the British stuff like Peep Show and Green Wing and all these big shows. And then in America, he did like New Girl, and he did
oh,
Community, Parks and Recreation, just all these shows I loved. And I was like, I know it's him. It's Tristram. It's definitely him. So I called my agent. I said, I want a meeting with him during this lockdown. And he's like, well, I want £1,000,000, but I don't think I do, like, no, but we have a jokey thing, a relationship. And, but he couldn't get a meeting with Tristram. But then there was a tweet that said that he was going to be the virtual guest at the Cornish Film Festival. So I went to the film festival, and when you're in a thing and you're not paying attention to what they're saying because you're just waiting to ask your question. And I got my question, and I said the name of the script, and I said, "What are you looking? What's the one thing that you read in the script that makes you go, I have to direct this?" And he was like, "Weirdness. I want to see something funny and weird." And I was like, "Oh." Anyway, I emailed his agent 3 weeks later. I figured there was going to be loads of people emailing him afterwards. I got her to take the script, and 3 days later, he called me from LA, and he was like, "Who are you? I've never heard of you." And now we've had a partnership for 5 years, and we're getting two projects
Wow.
ready. Yeah, like it's so that's what I mean. Like it's not even just from a failure something happens, but it's like think about what everyone else is doing, and then don't do that. I
Yeah.
really
And
believe in that.
and really what I just heard is you're very resilient and you're also kind of weird. And I love that. You're
Yeah.
like, I do weird stuff. That's fabulous. What a
Oh yeah, no,
story.
I own my
I
weirdoness.
oh, me 100%. I'm with you. And what I
Yes.
say in those instances is it's the no asky, no getty. And um
Yes.
if you don't ask for it, you're never going to get it. And so,
Yeah, okay, you're so
I
right.
think I think I don't even know. Like, I think I might have even talked about it on one of the other podcasts that Josie and I have done. But I actually, I sent the chairman of the board an email for the Emmy Awards. And I was like, hey, you're going to go through a lot of change. And I think you need what I've got. And it was because Ellen DeGeneres had hosted, and she was such a different character and had brought a really different flair. And I think really made it more human, right? More relatable. And
Mhm.
when you look at the statistics of the membership of the Academy Awards, it's a lot of very seasoned Caucasian men who might not be open to an Ellen DeGeneres type, right? And what was really interesting is I ended up that was in 2014, and in 2017 I was on the road, and I had seen, like, I pulled over for fuel, and I'm at a gas bar, and
Mhm.
I had seen that Kevin Hart had rejected the host position, and so that was the year that Will and Jada Pinkett Smith were not attending because they were kind of boycotting because they didn't feel like there was enough diversity included
Mhm.
in the nomination processes and all of these different things. And so I forwarded him my email from 2014, and I said, John, everything I told you is going to happen is happening, because the Me Too movement had started.
What?
And he actually responded to me, and he was like, I didn't decline. And I was like, oh, okay, well, I'll buzz off. But it was just like, I got
That's
a
very
response.
cool. That's
Super cool,
very
right?
cool. And really
Because
clever as well.
yeah, well, and it's also really kind of cheeky, right? Like, to take something where
Yeah,
somebody's
but you
like
gotta be
borderline rejected
cheeky.
you.
No, you
Nobody
gotta
else
have
is listening.
audacity. You have to have
Yes,
audacity.
yes.
Yeah.
We published another podcast, and I say I believe in myself delusionally. Like, I'm delusional to the
Yeah.
point that I believe in what I bring to the table. And so, with that being in mind, right? So you've done these really wonderful
Hmm.
things, and you've experienced some really crazy
Mm.
stuff in your life, and
Yeah.
you've learned how to work around that crazy stuff to be the person that you want to
Yes.
be. Talk a little bit about your book, which is titled "Good Stuff to Read When You're About to Lose Your Shit."
Yeah. That it feels necessary right now, looking around the
Yes,
world. So the timing
yes.
couldn't be better. But yeah, it took me 3.5 years to write, and it is. I had a really tough 11 years. I call it my wilderness period, and where not a lot made sense. No matter what I
Mm.
did, it didn't seem to be getting anywhere, and I would have wins, but not. But then I would just be huge setbacks, and all kinds of crazy stuff happened. And I decided, because I was reading so much and learning so much and joking so much, and to get through it, I decided to kind of pull it all together. Because whenever I was down during the wilderness period, I would play the post-it game, which is like where you take a bunch of really strong post-its and you write down everything you've learned on different post-its or little notes of encouragement, and then you just put them in different places and you see what happens. It's really, really cool. And I thought that doing a book version of that would be a really lovely thing to help other people going through stuff. So um, when I started writing the book, I knew that from reading all these self-help books that I struggled with them. I loved them and they were really well written, but I could not read a whole chapter and then do a workbook. Like I would forget the workbook exists because I'm in the middle of a crisis. It's,
Yeah.
like I don't know how I'm going to pay my bills next week. That I don't have the time for the workbook. And so I decided that I know from crisis that sometimes you can barely breathe. You can barely breathe, and you're in your crying closet, or and you need one sentence. You just need one sentence. And so in the
Mm-hmm.
book, depending on all the different subjects, you can find one sentence if you need it, or a joke, or if you're the kind of person who sits in your car for 15 minutes before you go inside, then you've got a little more time. Maybe you want a story or whatever else. So, and it's just there to really help people, because I know what it feels like, and I know the lessons that helped and didn't help, and so it pulls lots of really cool uh, jokes and information and stuff together.
Which is powerful, right? I think, for those of us who've come through trauma and experienced some of the things that I think you and I have experienced in our lives, the ability to laugh is such a powerful tool. Like, it reestablishes and resets your brain. And if you are in those points of crisis where everything feels like it's just sitting on your shoulders and it's weighing you down, the ability to just pick something up where you know that the intent is to help you and guide you, but then there's some love and some humor in that. That's a really powerful tool.
Well, yeah, I mean, and it's pretty necessary, because I find you're in so many different emotional states when you're in a crisis. It doesn't really matter what
Yeah.
the source is, and so I know what it's like to be suffering and for it to be completely silent. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I describe it as being in a plexiglass box that's hoisted up on in front of an intersection, and everybody else is just walking by in their day-to-day lives, and you're banging on the plexiglass trying to get people's attention. And so I know what it's like to suffer in that silence. And so one of the reasons that I made it so varied was because I definitely wanted to be able to meet people exactly where they were.
Hmm. And I think self-help doesn't necessarily do that. I look at how I've written Unbreakable, and it's very much the
Mm,
same thing. Like, I could read, if I'm not feeling good, or I'm mentally exhausted, or I'm feeling really
mm,
stressed out, I could read the same line 12 times in a book and not get through a full chapter. And
mm.
in Unbreakable, what we've done is I've actually put first threads at the end of every chapter. And so it looks at it from like a resiliency tip, an action tip, like what just gets you up and moving. I mean, if it is get up and brush your teeth, get up and brush your teeth. If it is manage your emotional regulation doing this or whatever. But I actually did build a workbook that is at the end of the book. It's at the very end. How do you take
Oh, so it's
all of these
connected.
different
See, then you
things?
can't lose it. That's great. Yeah.
Yeah, and so it
I
is,
love
and
that, though.
but it doesn't insist that you sit and do
Hmm.
something. And I will
Yes.
say the other thing is the workbook. It is not just journaling, because I find that in my practice, there are a lot of people who are very reluctant to journal. I have
Mm.
a woman who I speak with, and she was in a really horrific car wreck, like horrific, and two people
Mm.
died in the other vehicle. And her therapist is like, just journal it, write it out. And she said, like, I don't have the mental bandwidth to sit and write it out while I'm running a business, raising children, recovering from the injuries that I sustained, and then dealing with the emotional burden of two people
Mm.
dying at her hand, right? I looked and I said, maybe you don't write it out. Maybe what you do is you start out by doing a voice note, right? Maybe you dictate it.
Ooh.
You're
Yeah.
still processing it, right? And so
Hmm.
it's being able to find ways to make the plan work for you, as opposed to you trying to fit
Absolutely.
into the plan, right?
Absolutely. I love that suggestion. That's really cool. Did that just come to you? Like, that's just
Mhm.
a really clever way of doing things. I think we tend to try and do things the way everybody else has always done them, and it just doesn't occur to us to do it a different way. I love that point.
Thank you. Yeah, and I
Mm,
mean, for
yeah.
me, that's just the way I always say. This is my experience. How I choose
Mm,
to show up and how I choose to live life is really up to me. And I think that the way that we're raised in our society, particularly in the Western culture, is you need to be this person. You need to show up like this. You need to do
hmm.
these things. This is the only way to do them. And it's like, No, but it's not, right? Like I can still manage through therapy. I can still, I mean, I look at my bodybuilding, right? My coach gives me cardio in the morning and cardio at night. If I'm online with a European client at 6 a.m. or 5:30 a.m., I'm not getting up at 3:30 or 4 to do cardio. That is dumb,
Yeah.
right? And
That's a
so
lot.
it is. And so I just create, okay, well, it's 360 minutes a week. Get it done when you get it done. We're splitting hairs, right? Like, I mean, it's just put the first things first. And
Thank
and I
you.
think it's taking something like, okay, maybe I don't want to read the full book. Maybe all I want to do is go in and find all of those dad jokes that you've written so that I have a repository for when I'm having a bad day. You know what I mean? I can put those on the sticky notes instead of my accomplishments, right?
Yeah, no, exactly. Actually, I do have a little thing about charting your accomplishments on your phone, because like I do this thing where if I open a spreadsheet, I forget it exists like 3 days later, and so I can't do stuff like that. But I do talk about charting your accomplishments. That's so important. I love that. Oh, you frozen?
Yeah, I think it's super important. I don't think that we take the time and really recognize um, what we have achieved in life, right? Like I think it's a lot of keeping up with the Joneses and less about us acknowledging the really good things that we do, right?
When it comes to charting your successes, it's something that I always tell any of the attendees when I do my networking sessions or it's in the book or whatever else. We forget so easily those little things that we accomplish. My friend, he keeps a jar, and every time something good happens or he has a little win, he puts it on a piece of paper, and then he puts it in the jar, and then he reopens it at on New Year's Eve, which I think is magnificent. We really do have to remember things like that. I think we suffer from imposter syndrome, and because we
Yeah.
forget all of the amazing things that we do. We forget how much we've learned and how much, and that growth, you know?
That's a really fantastic idea. And it's interesting. Like when my daughter was, I want to say she was probably 14 or 15. Um, she was going through a lot of change, right? Going into grade 10, starting a new school, athletics,
Mm.
all of these different things, and new relationships because we're in a new school. And she came to me one day and she said, "Mom, I think I need to talk to somebody. It's not that I can't trust you." And I said, "Hey, you don't owe me an explanation. If you want to go and talk to somebody, that
Hmm.
this is not a question. This is not. It's a problem you think you need to explain yourself, right?"
Absolutely.
And
Mm.
so she ends up seeing this really really great counselor. He connected really well with the kids in our community. But what was really interesting, one day she was just having a really down in the dumps kind of hormonal, sad, difficult day, and somebody had given me like a giant Starbucks cookie jar, and it was full of all of their coffee and goodies and that straw shit that they
Ooh.
put in everything that gets everywhere. And I had kept that, and I'd had it for years, and it sits up on like the windowsill in my kitchen. And when I travel, because I travel a lot, I've traveled since she was 7. What I would do is I would leave a stack of sticky notes for the nanny or for my wife to put on her breakfast spot every single morning. Because this is before, I mean, she was little, right? So she's not texting me. So every morning she would wake up and she would have a love note from me. And
That's
she told me,
gorgeous.
oh, we're like thick as thieves. And so she told me once, she said, "I actually thought you would come home in the night, put it down for me, and then leave." And I was like, "Oh my Lanta, that's heartbreaking." Right? No, I'm not doing that. I would come give you a hug if I was home. Um, but what she didn't realize was that every little love note that she wrote me, every one that I wrote her, and every one that my wife wrote her or I kept in this cookie jar. And like it is giant. And so I said to her, "If you're not feeling loved and appreciated," I said, "I want you to go through this vessel of love." And she dumped it out,
Oh.
and it was jam packed. And so she was taking these notes out, and her eyes were as big as saucers because here she is looking at all of this, like a decade of love and love notes between our family. And it was really moving for her to see that and recognize that she was indeed very loved and very supported. And
Mm.
so similar but different in that, I think if we retain those things, I love the time capsule idea, right? On January 1st, capturing those wins starting
Yeah.
January 1st and then open it up at the end of the year. What a way to celebrate.
I know, right? What a gift. We forget all the good things that happened to us. We do. And it's so nice to,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I put mine on my phone, and yeah, that's how I remember to do it.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful. So, talk a little bit about your pathway to getting published, because I'm going through the publishing rigmarole right now. And I'm always
Yeah.
keen to hear from other people who've gone through it or are going through it.
Okay. I have a very interesting situation when it comes to the publishing thing. So I have a regular agent, my comedy writing agent, and I was like, I've nearly written a whole book. This is what it's called. What do you think? So I sent it to him, and he's like, "Oh, I know exactly who's going to love this in terms of a literary agent." So he gives it to the literary agent. We have a meeting right away. She's like, "I am so representing this book. This is great. Oh my god, I love this. It's hilarious." Anyway, then she goes, "I'm warning you." I was like, "Okay. Oh my god, what?" And she said, "Because this is nonfiction, uh, and you don't have an audience, like you haven't got a big social media following, that's going to be a problem. I'm just flagging it for you now. I'm calling it. The publishers are going to go. She's come back when she's got, however many." So I was like, well, let's just see what happens. Sometimes, I mean, the agent suggested to me that I take a couple years and build a social media following and then do it that way. And I was like, the whole book is about
Mm.
how I have not got the time to do that. The whole book is about like struggling, working 3 jobs at the same time, or 5 jobs at the same time. You've got to be kidding. Anyways, so I said, let's just package it up and say, I'll fill out the thing, I'll do the pitch or whatever. You get it ready, you pick the publishers, let's do it. So we did like 20 small to medium publishers, and then 10 medium ones, and then like the big 5 or whatever. And we started getting the feedback pretty quickly. And they all said essentially the same thing. This is really funny. This is genius. This is hilarious. Who is she? Who is she? Who is she? Tell her to come back when she's got 50K followers. Tell her to come back when she's got 80K followers.
Yeah.
So I was like, if I had 80K followers, why would I need a publisher? Why would I give away 90% of the book's price? That's insane. So I just got really mad, and I just kind of had a no moment. And I was like, I'm going to do it my damn self. And I didn't even go on Amazon or anything. My dad was like, are you crazy? You need to go on Kindle. You need to, and I was like, they take 30%. It's just ridiculous. I'm just going to sell it on my website. If people find it, they find it. It's great. I am not killing myself. I am not doing the work of 8 people to do this. I'll just do it myself, and I will punk rock the hell out of this. And so I've developed all these really cool strategies, because I am not going to do it the way other people do it, because then you get the same results that other people get. So, and I'm getting magic. It's really cool. Like, I think this is the way. I really do. I think it's the way. So I don't know what help to give you,
It's so
except
interesting that you say that.
Mm.
You've given me a lot, because I didn't submit to very many publishers, actually, because I was like, I'm not going to waste my time putting things together for an industry that's just going to reject me, right? Like, and I didn't go with a literary agent because I had the opportunity not to. And so I submitted to 3 publishing houses, 2 on June 1st and 1 on June 2nd. And the one on June 2nd came back and said the exact same thing. And like the response letter from this individual was condescending. Like, it was like, how dare you put this shit into my inbox? Who are you? You don't have 6,000 people on your mailing list. You don't have this. Oh, a book doesn't create a movement creates a book. And I was like, you know what? I am a movement, and there are people who are sitting waiting for this book. We have a wait list on the website that is upwards of 300 people right now. And he was like, the average book only sells between 300 and 500 copies. There's 3 million books a year, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, okay, first off, don't talk to me like I'm an asshole, because I'm not. I might be new to the publishing industry, but I'm a senior executive in the business world. I'm not stupid. Don't treat me like I am. Right? Like, and it's just like, it was like, it was so shocking to me. And so we kind of made like a couple of snotty responses on TikTok in a very confidential way, because obviously we don't want to shoot ourselves in the foot. But I mean, at the end of the day, self-publishing is probably going to be the way that I end up going, because it's my story and it's my intellectual property and it's who I am as a
Mm,
person. So really
yeah.
what you've just done is
Yeah.
you've just validated kind of the direction that Josie and I were thinking.
Well, yeah, I mean, you keep like 90% of the book's value. And you know what I do is because again, you got to think outside the box and do things differently when you don't have a lot of resources. And so I'm doing like 50-50 splits, with organizations and groups, let them sell it and then they can keep half of it, still way
Yeah.
more than I would have made from a publisher. And now I've got great
Yep.
relationships,
Absolutely.
lots of different audiences. I like the idea of, you take the people with you, all of the people who are going to going through the same thing. I think it's cool. I think it's cool. I like it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a
And I think
warrior
it's
kind of way.
personal too. Like I don't, absolutely. And I think about it and it's like I don't ever want to like I want to be unbreakable, but I don't want to be untouchable. You know what I mean? And it's
Mm,
like people get to a certain level of perception, I guess I would say self
mm,
perception, and they become less human. They become inaccessible.
mm,
They don't respond to the random thread comment of somebody saying, "Hey, I really dig your stuff. Do you want to come and be on my podcast?" You know what I mean? And it's just like because they become larger than life in either their own britches or because other people compel them to be that way. And I mean, authenticity and humility are really important things to me. It's how I was raised. It's a part
mm-hmm.
of my calling card, right?
Yep.
And I don't ever want to be somebody who's not those things because I think they're important. And I think in the world that we live in today, I think the world is
Mm,
deficient.
mm-hmm. Oh God, yeah. And I think there's going to be a bigger need for it. And I think there's actually going to be a big backlash in terms of what society is like right now. And there will be a return to doing things in person, and there will be a need for authenticity. And I can see it coming. I love that.
Yeah,
That can
absolutely.
only
Me
be
too.
good.
I agree because I think that's what people want, especially in the space of trying to help other people. I mean,
Mm,
I would never, talk poorly of any other person who's in self help. But one of the things that Josie and I talk about quite frequently is how the information that we're looking to publish is so accessible for other people. Like
mm,
it's not, you don't have to be at a certain job band. You don't have to be at a certain income level. Like the things that we're putting in people's hands also are, you don't necessarily have to have mental health in order to apply these things, right?
yeah.
And that's the thing is that it's how do you make the information accessible to the people who want it and make it so that they look at it and they see a mirror and not a window that is stopping them from
I
walking
love that.
in?
I love that question. What a brilliant question. I think the most important thing is, I mean, I'm the kind of person who half the people in the world despise anyways because I'm very blunt. And so I am the way I am. I am this way. And I don't mean that in an obnoxious Karen way. I just mean I am going to speak my mind. I'm not going to bullshit you, and I'm not going to tolerate bullshit. So that's just the way it is. And I think I got nothing to lose. I'm a 53-year-old disabled comedy writer in a world that's falling apart. Like, I got nothing to lose. And so I am the kind of person who, I am not kidding, when I work out at home, I will go to the kitchen and eat a Dorito in between sessions, right? And so I think it's one of those things where if you're willing to be honest about things like that, I think and be specific. It doesn't matter, if
Yeah.
you talk about, oh, I felt this way. You have to give them specifics. I'm the kind of person where if I see a French fry, I really am making myself sound like crap, but I am the kind of person where if I see a French fry, a McDonald's French fry on the seat of the car, I won't eat it, but I'll think about eating it. Do you know what I mean? And I think it's one of those things where
Yes.
I talk about my idiocy, like in the idiots chapter. I don't let myself off. I talk about specific moments that I was a total idiot. And I think, using that in a kind of conversational tone, and I get like loads of people are formal, and that's just not me. I'm very, very informal. And I think that is something that, I mean, the feedback I've gotten has been crazy, and people have just been like, I have nodded at everything. I've never related to a book so much, that kind of thing. So I think if you're willing
That's
to
great.
let go and really talk about the stuff that, when you do a self-help book or you do a testimonial thing and you bare your soul, unless if you don't panic after you hit the publish thing, if you don't panic about how much you've told the world, you're not doing enough yet.
Okay, well, I've been shitting my pants since June 1st, so I think I'm
There
gonna
you
get.
go. Boom.
I was like
See,
emailing my sister. I'm like, by the way, I just exposed our whole life. Like, and she was
I
like,
love.
okay, that's great. Okay, so that's good. That anxiety that I'm feeling in my gut that everyone's gonna know all my shit. I'm good. Okay, fabulous.
Yeah, I did not expect that. And I hit publish, and it was probably about 2 hours later. I was like, I have literally told people my deepest, darkest secrets. This, why? Oh my God. I wasn't worried about strangers knowing. I was worried about other people, certain people I know knowing. And so,
Yes,
yeah, I
yes,
had to email a
yes. That's
friend
exactly
who
how
was
I felt.
committed.
Yes.
Yeah, this is exactly it. I was just like, no, I don't, y'all don't need to know that about me. And so I emailed a woman who I love, who I've known since I was a teenager, and she was committed once, like as in to a psychiatric facility, and she wrote a book about that, an amazing 600-page book about it, and it was so
Wow.
raw. It was so damn raw. And I always admired that. But she went, yeah, she said, the panic I felt after I published that was crazy.
Well, and
The
that's
vulnerability,
exactly how I
man.
felt like when I hit submit. It's that is exactly
Mm.
it. I think what it is we're taking. I always tell people we're taking the veil off the ugly bride and telling her she's just not getting married, right? And it's like when
That's brilliant.
and so here I am, ugly bride, crying as I'm talking about the aunt who was a compulsive cleaner, and you know what I mean. Like I'm talking about people,
Mm.
and I'm being respectful in terms of who they were and what they contributed. Because like when I look at the way that I've structured Unbreakable, the first section is really the origin story of who I am. Then it goes into the community that
Mm.
raised me, and it's like I tell a
Yeah.
story in there about a woman who ran our daycare. And I only used initials, Mrs. J. And Mrs. J had 9 kids, and she was very maternal, and she was absolutely lovely. But I have very, very, very thick, curly hair. And I wouldn't let my dad brush it because after a bath, he would put a towel on my head and he would just do that. Like he would rub my head really fast. And
Mm.
so all it would do is it would just turn all of my curls into little snarls. And then he would try and brush it, and I would cry, and it would be a whole thing. And so one day he just said, okay, Mrs. J, cut it off. Right. And so she put it in a ponytail and she just went and snipped it right off. And then I went to school, and a kid with fetal alcohol syndrome made fun of me and told me that I looked like a boy. And so I'm like, you think about those stories, and they're very impactful as a person, but then you think about it as an adult and you go, why would you do that to a little girl?
Mm.
Right.
It's
And
very
so
weird.
it is, and what it comes down to is the experiences that we have. I think every single person in the world has baggage. Some of us just drive a Kubota and drag it behind us, and others are like the littlest hobo, and they've got it on a stick and a hanky on the back of their shoulder, right? And so I think there's an element of bravery that comes with telling your story in an
Mm.
authentic manner and not hiding the facts.
Mm.
And that was one of the things that I
Mm.
really strove to achieve in this book was not candy coating it, because
Mm.
that's not what people need. They don't need more sugar
Mm.
on top of the sugar that they get from social media.
That's the thing. And like when you go through the crisis yourself, you understand that innately. You get that, and you know what is going to work and what isn't. I hate to say this. I hate to say this, but I'm going to say it anyways. With a lot of self-help books, even though they're brilliantly written and the advice is brilliant, you can tell that who's written the book, their idea of a bad challenge or a horrible time is
Mm-hmm.
not in the same as my, I've said this like the last, I started writing the book 3.5 years ago. The last 2 years, two of the people in my immediate family, one had the second heart attack, one had 2 strokes. The sale of my flat fell through 8 times. My nana died. My friend died. My best friend in the whole world died.
Mm.
I've had lost 3 jobs to AI. It's just, and plus everything that's been going on in the world. And I had 2 winters where I had to work in
Yeah.
the cold, like every day.
Yeah.
I under I think when you come from a place where you really have been through it in a lot of different areas of your
Mm-hmm.
life, and you're trying to heal, and you're pulling that crap out from your childhood as well, on top of everything, because I think those times are when we're supposed to be healing, when we're supposed to be
Yes.
pulling out all those triggers and everything. And I think that opportunity to be confident enough in the insight you get from real struggle,
Yes.
I think that is a gift. And I think that really is at the foundation for proper connection with people. That is the only way I think that we can really connect with people, is to make vulnerability a holy thing.
Hmm. I agree. I often tell executives that I work with, you know, you have to sow the field with vulnerability before you can put the seeds of trust in. And, you know, it, I think about my experience writing, and I would have very vivid dreams. Like, I don't watch certain shows. I don't watch a lot of things before bedtime because I have a really active imagination. And so, like, I literally, I
Love
PVR
that.
Family Feud, and I watch Family Feud before bed. That's everybody knows, oh, mom's going to bed. She's got Family Feud on. And so I would have these crazy dreams. And, I do a weekly check-in with a therapist. And so she said to me, like, this is like the ultimate journaling experience for you. And I was like, it is. And the feelings and the emotions that it brought up, I was not prepared for. I was
Mm,
absolutely not prepared to feel the things I was feeling and
mm,
acknowledge the things that I was acknowledging. We're talking domestic violence, abandonment, sexual assault. I mean, like, there's a number of different things that you go through, and as you're experiencing those again, then it's taking them and it's repackaging them, I think, is really what it did. Because what it did was it created this crazy rear view mirror for me where I looked back and I went, oh my God, I am so strong. And my voice does
yes.
matter. And I do bring an enormous amount of value to this world based off of the things that I've experienced. And much like you, I regret nothing in my life.
Mm,
I'm grateful for the experiences that I've had.
love that. I love that. And I think it's, I don't want anyone to confuse that I'm saying that. I'm not trying to say that I think if we suffer, then we have an obligation with people. I think it's
No.
more,
Yeah.
you can either suppress the difficult or you can honor the difficult. There's a book that Alice
Yeah.
Walker wrote called Honoring the Difficult, which is absolutely amazing. And that really had an influence on me when I was a teenager, actually. And it's magnificent. She talks about how hard it was, to write. And that is, I think there's magic. There's an alchemy in that, isn't that? Transforming something that
Truly.
was really
Truly.
awful that happened to you, and going, I am going to define that experience, and I'm going to define how that affects me. And some of it's in my
Yeah.
control, some of it isn't. I know, because of nervous systems and things like that. But I'm
Hmm.
I'm allowing myself to be a work in progress. And, it's like when you pull one layer of scar tissue, then you realize there's a whole other layer underneath. But you
Yeah.
keep going, and you have to big yourself up. Yeah. And just honor your growth.
I agree. And I have a section in the book called "This is the Science," because when
Oh,
we think about it from a neurological perspective, when we think about it from a psychological perspective, when we think about it from a resiliency perspective, there are many different pieces that are patchworks in
mm,
this. And I talk a lot about Freud versus Adler. And I think that's
okay.
kind of like what we're talking about right now is Freud said to us, you are defined by the things that happen to you. You act and do
Mm,
the things that you do because of how you experienced life. Whereas
mm-hmm,
Adler looks at it and says, no, you choose how to use what you've experienced to be the person that you want. So Freud is,
mm-hmm.
you don't have a choice. This is just what it is. And you don't ever get rid of your baggage. Whereas Adler is, yep, it happened. And so what? What do you do with it? And I
Yeah.
think that when you're on a healing continuum, that really is something that is really powerful, because the healing continuum is, I think we all start in the Freud space. And as we start to understand how that trauma or how those experiences have shaped us, it provides us the opportunity to say, but I'm not going to be defined by the fact that I was a little girl left on a couch. I'm not going to be defined by the fact that I was part of a cult. In fact, that made me a better person. Because of those experiences, I've chosen to stand up and rise as a result of those things. And so even through the book, like, we have all of that in there. Thank you. We have all of that in there. And then what I have is that even at the end of those chapters, I've embedded first threads inside of those chapters, so that you can take the psychology, the neurology. I talk about how bodybuilding saved my life, how it helped me reprogram my brain and create better processes. And so, I think what it all comes down to whether you're using psychology or humor to heal, there's a beautiful opportunity to be able to take those experiences and turn them into what you want and not what you don't want.
I love that. I love every part of that. And I am a living example of your theory. I'm a living example of what you just said. I love that you said that. That's just giving me a little bit of goosebumps there. That's very cool. That's very
Thank
cool.
you. So Amanda, we're kind of at the end of our time here. I would love to make sure that people know where to find you and how to get a hold of you. Can you give us your Instagram handle, your threads? Where can people find you and your book?
Okay, great. So my website is, now this always makes people laugh, but it's www.itsamandagraham.com, as in the ITS are actually in the Amanda, because I get into an Abbott and Costello routine where they're like, oh, www.amandagraham. No, it's amandagraham.com. And then my social media handles are, my Instagram is minefieldness. So it's like minefield and then ness at the end. And that's me on Threads too. And then I'm on LinkedIn as Amanda Graham Ideas.
Wonderful. Amanda, I would love for you. Oh, this has been so fantastic.
I just love what you guys are doing so much.
It's incredible. This will not be the only time that you and I have a conversation. Let's be honest. We're gonna keep this dialogue going. And
yes,
what I'd
please.
like to do is just I'd love to invite you to kind of close us out a little bit. If you could leave our listeners with just one thing to take away from this to improve their day and just move on with great resilience, what would that be?
I think the main thing would be to let go of what you think life is going to look like. I, had struggled for so long with this very clear idea in my head of, I'm going to get the Emmy, I'm going to get the BAFTA, this is what I'm going to do, these are the steps I have to take. And, I kept hitting road, obstacle after obstacle, and nothing was going right and whatever else. And I remember thinking, a little while ago, my brain was going, why do you want the bat? Well, why is that the thing? And I was like, well, because I want to make people laugh. And my brain was like, well, so why do you need all the recognition? Why are you doing that? There's a million different ways you can make people laugh. And once that hit me, and I was like, yeah, why am I thinking that this is the only way I could go? What I want is to connect with people. What I want is to broadcast my weirdness and have weirdness broadcast back to me, and I think, the minute I let go of what I thought the only path was, so many different opportunities came up to me. And what's ironic is that more TV opportunities came up to me too. But and now I'm doing 5 different things that I never thought I would do. And so I want whoever's listening to take that with them. Is just, that's what I would suggest, because they could apply it in a million different ways.
That is incredible. Thank you so much, Amanda. This has just been such a pleasure. I can't wait to have you back.
It's been such a pleasure for me. I'm like, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity. And I'm quite excited about this chat, because I was fangirling a little bit. But anyways, this is cool.
That's wonderful. Wonderful. Well, listeners, remember, protect your peace, chase your growth, and stay unbreakable.